Well, hashtags are stupid, which is part of why they're so awesome. The first hashtag was heard around the world on August 23rd, 2007. In my usual way, I sort of decided, I was going to ask the internet, hey, what do you think about using this pound symbol to denote, groups in Twitter, as in like, hash barcamp or whatever. And everybody thought it was stupid, and I was like, all right, fine. So I just started doing it. I just started like hashtagging all my stuff. And, people asked me what the hell what I was about. What am I doing? Your stuff looks like crap. Like, stop polluting your tweets. It's like, whatever, man. So after doing this for a while, there became this like perfect opportunity actually to leverage hashtags in a really smart way, I thought, which is around the San Diego fires that happened, I think in 2008. So around that time, of course, Twitter had, just started being used by a bunch of people to find out what was going on. This is before, of course, there was like the land grab and whatever else has gone on since then. And people were using this one guy's Twitter stream, Nate Ritter, as a canonical source for all sorts of information happening about these San Diego fires. He was listening to the radio, watching TV, getting phone calls in, and then tweeting this stuff out. And in the beginning, he was using San space Diego space fire, : as the way that he was demarcating his tweets. And I said, look, if you want people to be able to search for this, they're going to be using all these different words and all these different spellings and stuff. Why don't you just pick one, and then for me, as a favor, as a personal favor, just put a little hash in front of it. So we did. And the rest, as they say, is history. Or made up. Of course, there were other like microsyntaxes that were, attempted around the same time that were much more complex. One of the ones that I think has stuck is the stock tweet, whatever, it's just a $sign in front of the ticker symbol. But what's interesting about the hashtag is that first of all, it solves a human problem first. And secondly, it's not that complicated. I mean, you can like figure it out just by looking at what someone else did and then copy that. So people are able to learn just by seeing it. They're able to adapt it to their own purposes. They're able to repurpose it without asking permission. And they're able to teach other people, especially novices, about how to use this stuff. That's, to me, the definition of a generative technology. And that's why I think hashtags, serve a purpose and have grown as much as they have in the past couple of years. So when we think about the technologies that we build, I think it's important to sort of cast them in these different, yin and yang balances. On the one hand, you have pop computing, the simplification of technology so that many, many more people in the mainstream can benefit from these technologies, but that do so by taking away choice and freedom and expressiveness. And on the other hand, you have generativity, which allows you the ability to fork any idea, concept, or thing that you encounter and make it your own without having to ask permission. And of course, that's a gross oversimplification, but the point is to have these extremes that you're able to evaluate things that you see happening by. And so this brings me to, I guess, what I want to close on. In the beginning of this talk, I told you about my experience in high school and how I encountered the power of authority and its concern at the time, a very early concern for the power of the web and why messages that go out on the web actually can be, very powerful to people who currently have power. And this lesson sort of gave me a sense for the type of influence that I could have if I made the things that I made more open and more generative in nature. And so I think for open source and open web communities, it's really important that we think about the threats to our ability to actually continue to create and innovate and to share as we have been for the last decade because of the openness of the web. So again, nature has environmentalists and animals have PETA, I guess. The web needs advocates. It needs open web advocates. It needs people who stand for something that can also involve and include more and more people. One of the things, actually, in this conference is a huge exception, which is great, is that a lot of the open web and open source communities lack diversity. Gender diversity is one of the primary ones for sure, and I think that needs to be addressed directly. But it's also because we need to actually have a diversity of perspectives and talents and skills We need to be able to involve more designers and writers and documenters and thinkers in the process of creating web technology so that it is more generative, but also more useful and usable by a larger number of people. And so those are the things that actually keep me up at night and give me pause, but motivate me to continue talking